Sarah Blakely hired a patent attorney she could not afford. She was making $50,000 a year selling fax machines door to door. The attorney charged $300 an hour. She hired him anyway. 12 months later she had filed the Spanx patent that made her a billionaire. That was not luck. That was a deliberate strategy. And nobody teaches it in school because it keeps the gap between you and them exactly where it is. Here's what the gap actually looks like. The average person saves money by hiring cheap. They find the lowest bid. They do things themselves to cut costs. They protect their current cash like it is the only cash they will ever have. And that thinking is exactly why they stay exactly where they are. Self-made millionaires do the opposite. They hire people who cost more than feels comfortable, more than feels rational, sometimes more than they can technically sustain. And they do it on a 90-day window with a very specific logic behind it. That logic is what we are getting into right now. Let us talk about what is actually happening when a self-made millionaire makes a hire that looks insane from the outside. In 2008, a man named Gary Vaynerchuk took over his family's wine business. It was doing $3 million a year. He wanted to grow it fast. His first move was not to cut costs. He hired a team of people whose salaries combined were more than the business was currently profiting. His father thought he had lost his mind. Within 5 years the business was doing $60 million a year. The reasoning is not complicated once you see it. But it is invisible to most people because they are taught to think about money as a static resource. You protect what you have. You spend only what is safe. Wealthy builders think about money as a dynamic system. Money moves. Money multiplies when it is attached to the right human capital. And the right human capital is almost always priced above what feels comfortable. Here is the exact mechanic. When you hire someone at the edge of what you can afford, you create pressure. Real pressure. That pressure forces faster decisions. It forces you to generate the revenue to cover that salary. It collapses your timeline. You stop tolerating slow months. You stop accepting mediocre results. The elevated payroll functions as a forcing mechanism. It makes you move like you are already operating at the level you are trying to reach. This is why they call it the 90-day rule. The logic is simple. Hire the expensive person. Give yourself 90 days for that hire to generate returns that justify the cost. If the hire is right, the revenue expands to cover them and then some. If the hire is wrong, you know in 90 days and you adjust. You do not spend 5 years slowly figuring out that your cheap option was costing you more in lost opportunity than the expensive one ever would have. If this surprised you, subscribe right now. We cover the mechanics behind wealth that financial media never explains because explaining it clearly would be bad for their advertising model. Now here is the layer that most people miss even after they understand the first part. The expensive hire does not just generate revenue. They change your identity as an operator. When you bring in someone who is genuinely better than you in their domain, you are forced to elevate everything around them. You cannot hire a world-class marketing director and keep running operations like a side hustle. The excellence of that one person raises the standard of every room they walk into. This is compounding human capital. It is the same principle as financial compounding but applied to skill, standard, and organizational culture. One hire who operates at a higher level pulls the average up. They attract other high performers. They signal to the market that you are serious. That signal opens doors that were previously closed. Steve Jobs understood this better than almost anyone. He called it the A-player theory. One A player, he argued, was worth 50 B players. Not 10, 50. And the data from companies like Apple in the 1980s backs that up. Small teams of obsessively skilled people outperforming armies of competent ones. The people who stay stuck financially almost always make the same mistake. They hire for what they can comfortably afford right now. They optimize for short-term cash preservation. And they end up with a team that reflects the business they currently are instead of the business they're trying to become. So what can you actually do with this if you are not running a company yet? The principle scales down. It applies to every investment in human capital at every level. If you are freelancing, hire an accountant who works with people making more than you. Not one who serves your current bracket. The advice you get will be fundamentally different. It will be calibrated for growth instead of management. If you are building a side business, find one mentor or advisor who charges more than feels reasonable. Someone whose client roster is ahead of where you are. Pay the uncomfortable amount. The discomfort is the feature, not the bug. If you are employed and trying to move up, spend money on the coach, the course, or the professional connection that feels like a stretch. Not the one that feels safe. Safe investments in yourself return safe results. The 90-day rule applies here too. Give any elevated investment in human capital 90 days of real engagement. Not passive consumption. Active application. If it does not change how you operate in 90 days, it was the wrong investment. Move on and try again. The core shift is this. Stop protecting the money you have as if it is all the money you will ever see. Start treating it as a tool that gets sharper when you attach it to people who are better than you. Every millionaire you have ever admired made this shift at some specific moment. They stopped playing defense with their dollars and started deploying them like a weapon. You now know the mechanic they use. The question is whether you are going to file it away as interesting information or actually let it change how you make decisions next week. Do not go anywhere. The next video covers the second hiring rule that wealthy builders use. It is about who they fire and exactly when. And that one is even more counterintuitive than this one.